I thought leaving a note would fix everything. Something polite, professional. Please keep the noise down after midnight. I slipped it under his door at 2 a.m., my hands shaking from exhaustion and 3 cups of cold coffee. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything, except that the parties next door were destroying my deadline, my sanity, and my last nerve. When he knocked on my door 6 hours later, I opened it expecting an apology. Instead, I found a man in a charcoal suit that cost more than my rent, holding my note between 2 fingers like evidence. His green eyes didn't blink. You wrote this. Not a question. And in that moment, standing in my doorway in pajamas and yesterday's mascara, I realized I'd just complained to the one man in Chicago nobody dares to cross. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. My name is Emma Pierce, and I survive on deadlines and silence. For 3 years, my Lincoln Park apartment was my sanctuary, a 5th-floor walk-up with terrible plumbing and a radiator that clanged like church bells. But it was mine. The walls were lined with books I'd edited, manuscripts I'd saved, words I'd midwifed into existence. I was a freelance editor, invisible, forgettable, exactly how I liked it. Then 3 months ago, he moved into the penthouse loft next door. I never saw him, just heard him, music that vibrated through my coffee cup, laughter that bled through the walls at hours when normal people slept, voices in Italian, rapid and heated, that made my chest tight with a fear I couldn't name. I tried earplugs, white noise machines. I rearranged my entire schedule to sleep during the day. Nothing worked. The note was a last resort. I wrote it on good stationery, cream-colored, my initials embossed at the top, because even in desperation, I believed in decorum. I believed that politeness could solve anything. I believed a lot of stupid things back then. The morning he knocked, I'd been awake for 36 hours straight. My editor had called at midnight in a panic. Our lead author had pulled their manuscript, and I had 72 hours to salvage the spring catalog or lose the biggest contract of my career. I was wearing an old Northwestern sweatshirt with a coffee stain on the sleeve. My hair was in a bun, held together by a pencil. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman on the edge of collapse. I opened the door, and the hallway seemed to shrink. He was tall, 6'2", maybe more. The kind of height that wasn't just physical, it was presence. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of fabric that whispered money even before he moved. Dark hair, cut short, a jawline that could have been carved from marble, and those eyes, green like lake water in winter, cold, patient, unreadable. He held my note between 2 fingers, the paper looking fragile in his hands. You wrote this. His voice was low, smooth, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to command a room. There was an accent underneath, faint, Italian, softened by years but still there in the vowels. My stomach dropped. Yes. I'm sorry, the noise has been, I know. 2 words. He stepped forward and I stepped back. It wasn't conscious. My body just moved, making space for him the way you'd make space for a predator. He walked into my apartment without asking, his gaze sweeping over the cluttered coffee table, the manuscript pages scattered across the couch, the 3 empty mugs lined up on the windowsill. You're a writer. Editor. I edit books, manuscripts. You work at night? I work whenever I can actually think. It came out sharper than I intended. His eyes flicked to mine, and something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Curiosity, maybe. Like I'd surprised him. Why didn't you call the landlord? I did. 3 times. He said you own the building. A pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, the corner of his mouth lifted. I do. The confirmation made my knees weak. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how thin my t-shirt was, how exposed I felt. He was still holding the note, studying it like it was a puzzle. Why didn't you knock yourself? I didn't want to bother you. So you left a note. I thought it was polite. Polite. He repeated the word like it was foreign, like I'd spoken in a language he'd forgotten. He folded the note carefully, precisely, and slipped it into his inside jacket pocket. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. And I felt something shift in the air between us. You don't know me well enough to want to avoid me. I don't know you at all. No, you don't. He moved toward the door, then stopped. reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Plain white. No name, just a phone number embossed in black. He placed it on my coffee table, next to a manuscript titled The Silent Witness. Next time you need something, don't leave notes. Use that. I won't need... You will. The certainty in his voice made my skin prickle. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame. My name is Dante Caruso. And I'm sorry about the noise, Miss Pierce. It won't happen again. He said my name like he'd known it all along, like the note had been a formality, and he'd already decided I was worth remembering. The door clicked shut. I stood frozen in the middle of my apartment, staring at the business card like it might explode. My hands were shaking. Not from exhaustion this time, from something else. Something that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark, hearing the ocean below but not knowing how far down it went. I Googled him 30 seconds later. The first result made my stomach drop. Dante Caruso, alleged crime boss, Lincoln Park. The second result was worse. 3 unsolved murders linked to Caruso family operations. I slammed my laptop shut, unplugged it. Like that would somehow erase what I'd just read. That night, the music stopped. Completely. My apartment was silent for the first time in months. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the absence of sound and wondering what it cost. The next morning, I found a box outside my door. Inside, noise-canceling headphones, Bose, top of the line, the kind I'd bookmarked online but could never afford. And underneath them, folded carefully, a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Now you have no excuse not to call. I didn't call. I threw the headphones in a drawer and pretended the whole thing never happened. Pretended I hadn't Googled him 17 more times that week. Pretended I didn't know exactly what alleged meant when the newspapers used it. A legal cushion, a word that let them print the truth without getting sued. 3 unsolved murders. Racketeering, extortion, money laundering through half the restaurants in River North. And he knew where I lived, knew my name, had touched my coffee table with those same hands that I stopped myself. I had a manuscript due, a career to salvage, a life that existed in the safe, quiet space between my laptop screen and my kitchen counter. Dante Caruso was a problem I could solve by simply never opening my door again, except Chicago doesn't let you hide. Not really. 2 days later, I noticed the black SUV, a Cadillac Escalade, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, idling across the street every morning when I left for the coffee shop. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Then I thought I was being watched. Then, on the third morning, a man stepped out. He was maybe 50, built like a boxer gone soft, wearing a leather jacket despite the September heat. He didn't approach me, just nodded. Once, like we'd met before, like he was confirming something. His name was Marco. I didn't know that yet. I just knew that when I walked to the L station, he followed 20 paces behind. When I ducked into Whole Foods, he waited outside. When I finally sprinted the last block to my building and slammed the door behind me, I looked through the peephole and saw him standing on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, patient as stone. I called the police. They took my statement with the bored efficiency of people who'd heard worse. A patrol car drove by once. Marco was gone by then. He came back the next morning. I lasted 5 days before I cracked. It wasn't the surveillance that broke me. It was my editor. Judith called at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, her voice tight with the kind of panic that meant someone important was threatening to pull funding. "Emma, I need a miracle. I'm working on the rewrites. I'll have them by..." "Not the rewrites. I need Anthony Greco." My stomach dropped. Anthony Greco was a reclusive true crime writer who lived somewhere in Lake Forest and hadn't done an interview in 12 years. He was also the only author who could replace the manuscript we'd lost, if I could convince him to work with us, which was impossible. Greco didn't take meetings, didn't answer emails, didn't exist to the publishing world except as a name on a spine. "Judith, I can't just..." "You have 72 hours, or we lose the spring catalog. Find a way." She hung up. I sat on my couch in the dark, listening to the radiator clang, and stared at the business card I'd fished out of the drawer 3 days ago. Plain white. No name. Just a number I'd memorized without meaning to. Everyone knew the Carusos had connections everywhere. Politicians, judges, people who didn't want to be found, and people who made other people disappear. If anyone could get me access to Anthony Greco, it was Dante. I picked up my phone, put it down, picked it up again. My hands were shaking when I typed, "I need a favor." His response came in seconds. "I'll pick you up at 8. Dinner was at a private club I didn't know existed. No sign on the door, no hostess. Just a man in a black suit who looked at Dante, nodded, and stepped aside. Inside, the walls were paneled in dark wood, the lighting low and golden. Every table was occupied by men in expensive suits speaking in low voices. No one looked up when we entered, but I felt them notice. Dante led me to a corner booth, the kind of spot where you could see the entire room but no one could hear you. He ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. Some kind of pasta I couldn't pronounce. Wine that tasted like it cost more than my monthly rent. "You need Anthony Greco." Not a question. I shouldn't have been surprised. Dante Caruso didn't strike me as a man who agreed to dinners without knowing exactly what they were for. "How did you Googled him 4 times yesterday. From your apartment." My blood went cold. He saw my expression and something flickered in his eyes. Not quite amusement, not quite regret. "I told you, you don't know me well enough to avoid me. That goes both ways. You're watching me. I'm protecting you." "From what?" He leaned back, his hand resting on the table between us. Long fingers, no rings, a scar across his knuckles that looked old and deliberate. "From the fact that you left a note on my door. From the fact that you came to my home. From the fact that people in my world noticed. I didn't come to your home. I live next to you. That's not. It doesn't matter what it is. It matters what it looks like." The waiter arrived with our food. Dante didn't touch his. Neither did I. "I'll get you the interview with Greco. He owes me. But you need to understand something first." He reached across the table and turned my phone face up. On the screen, a text I'd missed while we were walking in. Unknown number. A photo of me leaving my building that morning. Marco visible in the background. The caption read, "Who's your new friend?" My throat closed. There are people in this city who think you matter to me. And if you matter to me, Emma, you're leverage. I don't matter to you. I don't even know you. No. But they don't know that. He slid the phone back to me. His voice dropped, quieter now, almost gentle. "I'll get you the interview. I'll get you whatever you need. But in return, you follow 3 rules. You don't walk anywhere alone anymore. You don't take the L after dark. You don't open your door unless you know who's on the other side. That's insane. That's reality." I wanted to argue, to tell him I didn't need his protection, didn't want his rules, didn't ask for any of this. But my hands were shaking. And there was a photo of me on my phone sent by someone I'd never met. And Dante Caruso was looking at me like I was a problem he'd already decided to solve whether I wanted him to or not. What if I say no? Then you go home. And tomorrow Marco follows you anyway. Because I don't let people get hurt on my watch. Especially not people who only got noticed because of me. The weight of that settled over the table like smoke. He wasn't threatening me. He was stating a fact. And somehow that was worse. "Why do you care?" For the first time, his expression shifted. Something almost vulnerable crossed his face before he locked it away. "Because you could have knocked. You could have called the landlord. You could have done 100 things that would have been easier than writing that note. But you chose the polite option, the kind option, and kindness is..." He stopped, looked away. Rare. We left the restaurant an hour later. Marco was waiting by the car. Dante opened the door for me, and I hesitated. I didn't say yes. "I know. So why are you..." "Because you will." He was right. I hated that he was right. When I got home that night, my apartment felt smaller, colder. I locked the door, checked the windows, texted Judith that I'd have the Greco interview by Monday. Then I sat on my couch in the dark and tried to convince myself I'd made a choice, not a mistake. At 2 a.m., I woke to my phone buzzing. Another unknown number. Another photo. This time it wasn't me in the picture. It was my building, my window, the light on in my living room. And beneath it, 5 words that made my hands go numb. "You were chosen as a message." I didn't sleep. How could I? Someone had photographed my window. My window. Which meant they'd been standing on the street below, looking up, watching the light behind my curtains and deciding I was worth documenting, worth threatening. "You were chosen as a message." I read those words until they stopped making sense, until they became just shapes on a screen, until my eyes burned and my coffee went cold and the sun came up over Lake Michigan like the world hadn't fundamentally shifted overnight. At 7 a.m., someone knocked. 3 sharp raps, authoritative and familiar. I looked through the peephole. Marco. I opened the door halfway, keeping the chain latched. He didn't look surprised. Mr. Caruso wants to see you. Tell Mr. Caruso I'm fine. He didn't ask if you were fine. He said, pack a bag. I'm not going anywhere. Marco's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Pity, maybe. Or recognition. The look of someone who'd had this exact conversation before and knew how it ended. Miss Pierce, with respect, you can pack a bag, or I can pack it for you, but either way, you're not staying here. My hands were still shaking from the photo, from the message, from the knowledge that my home, my sanctuary, had been turned into a surveillance target by people I couldn't see, couldn't name, couldn't fight. I packed a bag. Dante's penthouse wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something dark, ostentatious, all leather and marble and the kind of aggressive wealth that demanded you notice it. Instead, it was almost austere. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, hardwood floors, minimal furniture, a kitchen island made of white quartz that caught the morning light and threw it back in soft angles. The only hint of excess was the art, 3 massive canvases on the far wall, abstract and violent, all red and black slashes that looked like anger made visible. Dante was standing by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He saw me and held up one finger. Wait. Marco left my bag by the door and disappeared down a hallway. I stood there, feeling like an intruder, while Dante finished his conversation. He was wearing dark jeans and a black Henley, no suit this time, and somehow that made him more intimidating. Less businessman, more something I didn't have a word for. He hung up, turned to face me. They sent you another message, not a question. Of course he knew. Of course he'd already seen the photo, traced the number, probably identified the exact street corner where it was taken. Who are they? People who think you're mine. I'm not. I know that. You know that. They don't care. He moved toward the kitchen, pulled 2 mugs from a cabinet, started making coffee with the kind of efficiency that suggested he didn't have staff do this for him, that he did it himself, every morning, because even crime bosses needed routines. Why me? I'm nobody. I edit manuscripts. I haven't even seen you since dinner last night. What kind of message could I possibly... You wrote me a note. The coffee machine hissed. He poured carefully, precisely, then slid 1 mug across the island to me. That's it? A note? You came to my door. You sat across from me at Giordano's. You left with me, arrived with me, were seen with me by 30 people who report everything they see to everyone who matters. I didn't know. No, you didn't. He said it without blame, but I heard the implication anyway. Ignorance doesn't protect you. I wrapped my hands around the mug, needing something to hold on to. The coffee was perfect. Strong, dark, exactly how I took it. He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. The rival crew is called the Zanetti family. They've been trying to move into Lincoln Park for 2 years. I've been stopping them. Last month, I stopped them permanently. The way he said permanently made my stomach turn. And they think hurting me will hurt you. They think threatening you will make me negotiate, make me vulnerable, make me human. And will it? He looked at me over the rim of his mug, those green eyes unreadable. That's what they're trying to find out. I stayed. What choice did I have? My apartment wasn't safe. The police couldn't help. Marco had made calls, and the detective who took my statement suddenly remembered he had another case that needed his attention. And every time I thought about leaving, about running, about disappearing into some other city where Mafia wars didn't touch freelance editors, I remembered the photo, my window, the certainty in that message. You were chosen. Dante set me up in a guest suite that was bigger than my entire apartment. King bed, attached bathroom with heated floors, a desk by the window where I could work. He brought me my laptop, my manuscripts, even the 3 dead plants from my kitchen windowsill. You didn't have to. You'll be more comfortable if you can work. How long do I have to stay here? Until it's safe. When will that be? He paused in the doorway, his hand resting on the frame the same way it had that first morning in my apartment, like he was always on the verge of leaving, always calculating the distance between himself and everything else. I don't know yet. That night, he took me to the south side. I didn't ask why, didn't argue. Just got in the car when Marco opened the door and watched Chicago transform outside the window, Lincoln Park bleeding into the loop dissolving into neighborhoods I'd never visited, streets I'd never driven down, corners where liquor stores had bars on the windows and men stood in clusters that scattered when our headlights swept over them. We stopped at a warehouse. Unmarked. Industrial. The kind of building that existed in the negative space of the city, that Google Maps didn't label, that you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. You don't have to come inside. Dante said it quietly, his hand on the car door, giving me an out. But I heard what he wasn't saying. This is what you need to see. I got out of the car. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous. Exposed beams, concrete floors, and in the center, under a single hanging light bulb, men in suits, maybe a dozen of them, standing in a loose circle around something I couldn't see. They turned when we entered, and the room went absolutely silent. Dante walked forward, and the circle parted. On the floor, on his knees, a man, 40, maybe, balding, blood on his shirt, his hands zip-tied behind his back. He looked up when Dante approached, and I saw fear so pure it made my throat close. The man started speaking, rapid, panicked Italian, and Dante held up one hand. Silence. Then Dante crouched down, eye level with the kneeling man, and spoke one sentence. Low, almost gentle. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. This is your last chance. The man shook his head, sobbing now, still refusing. Dante stood, looked at his men, nodded once. They moved so fast I didn't process it until it was over, hands grabbing the man's arms, dragging him backward into a room I hadn't noticed, a door slamming shut. Then, silence. No gunshot. No scream. Just the echo of that door closing and the knowledge that something final had just happened behind it. I couldn't breathe. Dante turned to me. His expression hadn't changed, hadn't hardened or softened. He looked exactly the same as he had making coffee that morning, handing me my mug, asking if I needed anything. That man worked for the Zanettis. He took the photo of your window. He sent you that message. My legs went weak. Marco appeared beside me, steadying me with one hand on my elbow. He was following orders, but orders don't absolve you. Not in this world. What did you do to him? What I had to... That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He walked toward me, stopped close enough that I could see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the terrible calm in his eyes. This is the world you walked into, Emma, and the only way out is through. We drove back in silence. I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the city reverse itself, South Side to Loop to Lincoln Park, and tried to reconcile the man who'd made me perfect coffee with the man who'd just ordered something unspeakable with a single nod. When we got back to the penthouse, I went straight to my room, didn't eat, didn't work, just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands until they stopped shaking. At midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video this time? I almost didn't open it. But some part of me, the part that had watched my mother's case go cold, that had learned young that ignorance was just another kind of danger, made me press play. The video was dark, grainy, security footage from somewhere I didn't recognize. And there, in the frame, me, walking to the coffee shop 3 days ago. Marco 20 paces behind. But that wasn't what made my blood freeze. It was the timestamp. And the person standing across the street, watching me through a telephoto lens. Not some nameless Zanetti enforcer. Someone I recognized. Someone from my past. Someone I'd spent 15 years trying to forget. The video ended. A new message appeared. Caruso can't watch you every second. We'll be patient, and when he looks away, we'll remind you who you really belong to. Beneath it, a photo I'd never seen before. My mother. The night she died. Standing in our old kitchen, coffee mug in hand, wearing the locket I'd received in that package, and behind her, reflected in the window, a shadow. A man. Vincent Kane. I didn't show him the video. Not right away. I sat in that guest room until 3 a.m. watching it over and over, pausing on my mother's face, on the shadow behind her, on the timestamp that proved Vincent Kane had been in our house the night she died. The night the police called it a random home invasion. The night my entire childhood shattered into before and after, Kane, the loan shark my father owed money to, the man whose name I'd heard whispered in our kitchen when I was supposed to be sleeping, the ghost I'd spent 15 years pretending didn't exist. And now he was using my mother's murder, her murder, as leverage in some sick game with Dante Caruso. At dawn, I heard movement in the kitchen, coffee brewing, the quiet rhythm of someone who didn't sleep much either. I pulled on sweatpants and one of my oversized shirts and walked out barefoot, my phone clutched in my hand like evidence. Dante was standing at the island, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when I entered, and whatever he saw in my face made him set the tablet down immediately. What happened? I held out my phone. He took it, watched the video in silence. I saw his jaw tighten, saw his fingers go still against the screen when my mother's image appeared. Vincent Kane. I said the name like it was poison, like saying it out loud might summon him. He killed my mother, 15 years ago. The police said it was random, but it wasn't. My father owed him money, gambling debts, and Kane made her pay for it. Dante set the phone down carefully, too carefully. The kind of control that meant he was forcing himself not to react. Your father drank himself to death 2 years later, never told me the truth, never told anyone. My voice cracked. I pressed my palms against the cool quartz, needing something solid. I wasn't random collateral in your war. I was already part of this world. I just didn't know it. Emma, don't apologize. Don't tell me you're sorry. I don't want your pity. The words came out sharper than I intended, razor-edged with years of grief I'd buried under deadlines and manuscripts, and the careful architecture of a life built on forgetting. He moved around the island, slowly, giving me space to retreat if I needed it. I didn't move. What do you want? The question was so simple, so direct. No one had asked me that in 15 years. What I wanted, not what I needed, not what was safe, not what made sense. What I wanted. I want to see him. No, that wasn't a request, and that wasn't a negotiation. We stood there, 3 feet apart, locked in a battle of wills that felt older than the room we were standing in. He was used to people obeying him. I was used to people underestimating me. He killed my mother. He's using her death to get to you. And you think I'm just going to hide in your penthouse while you handle it? Yes, that's exactly what I think. Then you don't know me at all. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or respect. He ran a hand through his hair. The first gesture I'd seen that looked anything like frustration. You want to confront the man who murdered your mother. I understand that. But Kane isn't just dangerous, Emma. He's meticulous. He's survived in this city for 30 years by being smarter than everyone who's tried to stop him. So you're saying I'm not smart enough. I'm saying you're hurt. And hurt people make mistakes. The accuracy of it hit harder than any threat. I turned away, blinking against the sudden burn behind my eyes. I would not cry, not here, not in front of him. I felt him move closer, not touching, just present. I'm going to tell you something I don't tell people. My sister died when I was 17. A rival family used her to send my father a message. She was innocent. She was good. And she died because she loved someone who lived in my world. His voice was quiet, raw. I turned to face him. I watched my father destroy himself trying to get revenge, watched him become the thing he hated. And when he finally got it, when he finally killed the men responsible, it didn't bring her back. It didn't fix anything. It just made him a murderer who'd lost his daughter. So what are you saying? That I should just let Kane win? I'm saying revenge and justice aren't the same thing. And you need to decide which one you want. We stood in his kitchen as the sun rose over the lake, 2 people bound by violence we didn't choose, trying to find language for grief that had no words. I need rules. I said it quietly. Testing. What kind of rules? If I'm going to stay here, if I'm going to trust you, I need to know what this is, because I can't keep feeling like I'm your responsibility, like I'm something you're managing. He considered this. then nodded. 3 rules. You stay at the penthouse until Kane is handled. You don't leave without Marco or me. You tell me everything. Every message. Every call. Every person who looks at you wrong. And my rule? You get one. If this is about protection, I need honesty. Complete honesty. You don't lie to me. Ever. Not to keep me safe. Not to spare my feelings. If I'm in this world, I need to see it clearly. He extended his hand, not to shake, just palm up, an offering. Deal. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid, and for the first time since I'd opened that note, I felt something besides fear. That night, I fell asleep on his couch. I didn't mean to. I was editing a manuscript, and the words started blurring. And the next thing I knew, there was a blanket over me and morning light streaming through the windows. Dante was in the chair across from me, laptop closed, just watching, making sure I was safe. His hair was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He looked almost human. How long have you been sitting there? Long enough. You should sleep. So should you. Neither of us moved, and in that moment, I understood something fundamental. We were both survivors, both marked by violence that had stolen people we loved, both trying to navigate a world where safety was an illusion and trust was the most dangerous thing you could offer. 3 days later, a package arrived. Marco brought it to me, his face carefully neutral. Inside, a gold locket. Old, expensive. Engraved with initials I'd traced with my fingers 1,000 times as a child. E.P. My mother's locket. The one stolen the night she died. And underneath it, a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Some things belong to us. Some things we take. Ready to talk about which category you fall into. My hands were shaking when I showed Dante. He made one phone call, and everything changed. Dante made one phone call, spoke 3 sentences in Italian, hung up. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between fury and grief, like he was watching a story he'd already lived play out again in front of him. Kane didn't kill your mother for money. He killed her to send your father a message, and now he's using you to send one to me. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the couch, the locket still clutched in my hand, its chain tangled around my fingers like a noose. How do you know that? Because it's what I would do. The honesty was brutal. No apology, no softening, just the truth, delivered like a blade between the ribs. My father, he never told me. He just drank, every night, staring at the wall like he was waiting for something. I thought he was weak. I thought he was a coward for not fighting back, for not finding who killed her. He knew who killed her. That's why he drank. Dante sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. For once, he wasn't trying to fix anything, just bearing witness. Kane owns half the South Side. Loan sharking, protection rackets, trafficking. Your father probably borrowed $10,000 and ended up owing $50,000. That's how it works. And when he couldn't pay, Kane took something more valuable. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else, someone who could say these words without breaking. I was 12. I came home from school and found police cars everywhere. They wouldn't let me inside. A neighbor took me to her apartment, and I sat on her couch eating crackers while my mother's body was carried out in a bag. I'd never said this out loud. Not to therapists, not to friends, not to anyone. But something about Dante's silence, the way he listened without trying to comfort me, made the words come. They said it was random. Wrong place. Wrong time. But my father knew. He knew, and he never told me. Never gave me a name. Never gave me anything but his ghost. Because he thought knowing would destroy you the way it destroyed him. Did it work? Dante met my eyes. You're still here, so no. The simplicity of it cracked something open in my chest. I'd spent 15 years believing I was damaged. Broken. A girl whose mother died and whose father gave up. But Dante saw something else. A survivor. I want to see him. Kane. I want to look him in the face and ask him why. Why my mother? Why me? Why any of this? Emma, you said complete honesty. No protecting me to spare my feelings. So tell me the truth. Can you stop me? He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the lake stretched gray and infinite under October clouds. No, but I can come with you. We drove to Kane's house that night. I didn't tell Dante I was leaving. I just took Marco's keys while he was distracted, found the address in the files Dante kept in his office, and drove myself across the city like I was in a dream. One of those dreams where you know you're about to fall, but you can't stop moving forward. Kane lived in a brick colonial in Bridgeport. Neat lawn, American flag on the porch. The kind of house that screamed respectability, that hid its secrets behind curtains and property taxes. I knocked. 3 times. Hard. The door opened. He was smaller than I remembered. That's what 15 years does. Turns monsters into men. Gray hair, reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck. He looked like someone's grandfather, like someone who coached Little League and went to church on Sundays. Then he smiled. Emma Pierce. You look just like her. My mother. He meant my mother. And the casual cruelty of it, the way he said it like a compliment, made my vision narrow to a pinpoint. Why? You'll have to be more specific, sweetheart. Don't call me that. Why did you kill her? He leaned against the doorframe, utterly relaxed. Behind him, I could see a living room, a television playing the news, a dog asleep on the couch. Your father made choices. Those choices had consequences. I didn't make the rules, Emma. I just enforced them. She wasn't part of his choices. She was innocent. No one's innocent. Not really. He pushed the door open wider, and I saw the television screen clearly now. Security footage, multiple angles, of me, of Dante, of Marco, of every move I'd made for the past 2 weeks. You've been busy? New boyfriend? Or is Caruso just another man making promises he can't keep? My hands curled into fists. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to make him hurt the way I'd hurt for 15 years. Behind me, tires screeched, a car door slammed. Step away from her. Now. Dante's voice cut through the air like winter. Kane's smile widened. Mr. Caruso. I was wondering when you'd show up. Come in. We have so much to discuss. Dante didn't wait for an invitation. He walked past me, past Kane, straight into that living room like he owned it. Marco appeared behind him, blocking the doorway, his hand resting inside his jacket where I knew a gun was holstered. Kane's smile never wavered. He closed the door gently, almost courteously, and gestured toward the couch like we were guests he'd been expecting. Please. Sit. Can I get you something? Coffee? Water? Cut the shit, Vincent. Dante's voice was ice. He didn't sit, just stood in the center of the room, hands loose at his sides, radiating the kind of controlled violence that made the air feel thinner. Kane shrugged and sat in his recliner, the dog lifting its head briefly before settling back to sleep. The normalcy of it, the domestic tranquility, made my skin crawl. You know why I'm here. I assume it has something to do with Miss Pierce, though I'm flattered you came personally. Usually you send Marco for the small jobs. This isn't small. No. I suppose it isn't. Kane picked up a remote and paused the security footage. My face frozen on screen, mid-step, completely unaware I was being watched. She came to see me. On her own. No escort, no permission. Which tells me something interesting about your arrangement. She's under my protection. Is she? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she's under your surveillance. There's a difference. I found my voice, finally, pushing past the fear lodged in my throat. Why are you doing this? My father's dead. Whatever debt he owed, it died with him. Kane turned those grandfather eyes on me, and I saw something ancient and cold beneath the gentle facade. Debts don't die, Emma. They transfer, they compound. Your father owed me $200,000 when your mother had her accident. With interest over 15 years, that's roughly $1.5 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's insane. I know exactly what you have. A 1-bedroom apartment you rent, not own. $43,000 in student loans. A freelance career that nets you maybe $50,000 a year on a good one. You couldn't pay me back in 3 lifetimes. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, mirroring Dante's earlier posture with mocking precision. But Mr. Caruso could, easily, which is why you've become so valuable. Dante moved so fast I barely saw it. 1 second he was standing still. The next his hand was around Kane's throat, slamming him back into the recliner. The dog yelped and scrambled off the couch. Marco's gun was out, trained on the hallway in case anyone came running. You touch her. You even think about touching her, and I don't stop with you. I go after everyone. Your nephew, your crew, every business, every account, every person who's ever said your name with anything other than hate. Kane's face was turning red, but he was still smiling. Still fucking smiling. Do it. Kill me right here. But when you do, remember, I've got evidence, photos, videos, financial records, enough to put you away for life. You touch me, and it all goes to the feds. Every last bit of it. Dante's grip tightened for a moment. I saw Kane's eyes bulge. Then he let go. Stepped back. Smoothed his jacket with deliberate calm. Then send it. But if you do, remember, I know where your daughter goes to college. Northwestern, right? Pretty campus, junior year, studying pre-med. I know your brother's parole officer. I know the halfway house where he's staying. I know every deal you've ever made, every person you've ever protected, every secret you think is buried. The room went absolutely silent. Even the dog had stopped moving. This is what protection looks like, Emma. Dante said it without looking at me, his eyes locked on Kane. You wanted to see it. Now you have. Kane rubbed his throat, his smile finally gone. So we're at an impasse. No, we're at a choice. Walk away from her. Erase the debt. Forget she exists. Or I make it my life's work to destroy everything you've built. And if I refuse? Dante's expression didn't change. Then we both lose. But I'll make sure you lose more. We left. I walked out on legs that didn't feel like mine, got into the car, sat in the back seat while Marco drove us away from that house with its neat lawn and its monster in reading glasses. I threw up in the parking lot of a closed pharmacy. Dante held my hair back without a word, his hand steady on my shoulder while I retched and cried and tried to process what I'd just witnessed. Is that who you are? I asked it between gasps, my voice raw. Yes. Would you have done it? Hurt his daughter? His brother? A long pause. Then, I don't know. The honesty was worse than a lie. I wiped my mouth, accepted the bottle of water Marco handed me, and looked at Dante in the dim light of the parking lot. He had evidence on you. Real evidence. I know. And he's going to use it. Probably. I closed my eyes, saw my mother's face, saw Kane's smile, saw the surveillance footage of myself, captured and catalogued like I was already a ghost. I'm the only one who can stop him. Dante's hand tightened on my shoulder. Emma, he's using me as leverage, so I become the opposite. I become the proof that you're not what they say you are, that you're not a monster. I am a monster. Then I'm about to save one. 2 days later, the FBI showed up at Dante's building. They had a warrant, evidence of racketeering, conspiracy, murder, and the anonymous tip that led them there came from an email account registered in my name. I didn't send that email, but the moment the FBI agent handed me the printout, my name, my old college email address I hadn't used in 5 years, a detailed breakdown of Dante's alleged crimes, I understood exactly what Kane had done. He'd framed me to fracture Dante's trust, to make me toxic, to isolate me so completely that even the man protecting me would have to wonder if I'd betrayed him. Dante was released within 4 hours. His lawyer was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a briefcase that probably cost more than my car. She made the warrant disappear like magic, citing procedural errors I didn't understand. But the damage was done. When Dante walked back into the penthouse, Marco stepped between us. Not aggressively, just there. A human barrier. And I saw it in his eyes. Doubt. I didn't do this. My voice came out smaller than I intended. Dante looked at me for a long moment, and I couldn't read his expression. Couldn't tell if he believed me or if he was already calculating how to remove me from his life without triggering Kane. I know. 2 words. But the way he said them, exhausted, certain, made my knees weak with relief. How? Because if you wanted to destroy me, you wouldn't use your own email address. You're smarter than that. He moved past Marco, past me, to the windows overlooking the lake. His shoulders were tight, his hands shoved in his pockets. I'd never seen him look anything but controlled. Now he looked tired, human, breakable. Cain set you up to make me doubt you. And if I doubt you, I can't protect you. And if I can't protect you, he wins. So what do? We don't do anything. I handle Cain. You stay here where it's safe. Something hot and sharp flared in my chest. Anger. Real anger. Not fear disguised as rage. No. He turned, surprised. Emma. No, I'm not a chess piece. I'm not leverage or bait or some problem you solve while I hide behind bulletproof glass. Cain used my mother's death. He framed me for crimes I didn't commit. He's been terrorizing me for weeks. And you want me to just… What? Wait. Trust you to handle it. Yes. Why? Because you're the man and I'm the fragile woman who needs protecting? Because he's a killer who survived 30 years by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone who's tried to stop him. Then I'll be smarter. The words hung between us. Dante's expression shifted. Surprise bleeding into something that might have been respect. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Cain thinks he's got us trapped. He thinks you can't move without risking everything, and I can't move without your permission. But he's wrong about me. He's always been wrong about me. I pulled out my laptop, fingers already moving across the keyboard. I'd been thinking about this since the FBI left, since I'd seen that fake email with my name on it and realized Cain had underestimated me the same way everyone always had. My father didn't just owe Cain money. He paid him. For years. I found the records after he died, cash withdrawals, transfers to shell companies. I never knew what they were for, but I kept them. Every single one. Dante moved closer, watching my screen. If I can trace those payments, match them to Cain's network, prove a pattern of extortion going back 15 years, the FBI would have enough to build a RICO case. Without you, without your alleged crimes, just Cain, just the truth. I looked up at him. His eyes were unreadable, but something had shifted in his posture. He wasn't trying to manage me anymore. He was listening. I need access to financial databases, banking records, the kind of access that's probably illegal. I know people. I need to move fast. Cain will realize what I'm doing. Marco will stay with you. And I need you to trust me. Completely. Even when it looks like I'm making a mistake. He crouched down so we were eye level. Close enough that I could see the faint scar through his eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the terrible vulnerability of someone who'd spent a lifetime trusting no one. I already do. I worked for 3 days straight. Marco brought me coffee and takeout while I traced payments through shell companies, matched dates to deposits, built a timeline that showed Cain's operation spreading through the South Side like a cancer. Dante's a people. Gave me access to databases I definitely shouldn't have had. I didn't ask questions. On the third night, I found it. The connection I needed. Cain hadn't just killed my mother. He'd killed 6 other people over 15 years. All of them spouses or children of men who owed him money. All of them made to look random. All of them sending the same message. Pay or lose everything. I called Cain's nephew, the tech guy who'd set up the fake email. Told him I had evidence that would send his uncle away for life. Told him I'd bury it if he helped me. He agreed to meet. A diner in Pilsen. Public. Safe. It was a trap. Mine. I recorded everything. His confession, Cain's orders, the names of everyone involved. Then I sent the files to Dante's lawyer, to the FBI, and to 3 journalists I'd worked with over the years. When I called Cain, my hands weren't shaking anymore. You wanted to destroy me because I mattered to someone powerful. But I didn't need his power to destroy you. I just needed mine. Cain was silent for a long moment. Then, you have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done. I've given them everything. Your operation. Your network. 15 years of evidence. And the only name on those files is yours. Caruso put you up to this. No, I did this myself. Because you killed my mother. And I'm done letting you in. I hung up. Turned off my phone. And when I looked up, Dante was standing in the doorway. I didn't know how long he'd been there. You could have been killed. His voice was raw. Angry. Afraid? So could you. Every day. That's the point, isn't it? We're both still here. He crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed me. Hard. desperate, like he'd been holding back for weeks and finally couldn't anymore. His hands framed my face, and I tasted coffee and fear and something that felt like relief. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. Don't ever do that again. Probably not a promise I can keep. Emma, I know. We stood there in his office while the city glittered outside and everything we'd survived pressed against the windows like a ghost. Kane was arrested the next morning. Kane was arrested at dawn. I watched it on the news from Dante's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like him, cedar and something darker, like smoke. Federal agents. Handcuffs. The perp walk choreographed for maximum humiliation. Vincent Kane, loan shark and murderer, looking small and old in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his reading glasses crooked on his face. The man who'd killed my mother. The ghost who'd haunted every corner of my childhood. The monster who'd turned out to be just a man, aging, ordinary, powerless in the face of evidence and the law he'd spent 30 years evading. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, something. Instead, I felt hollow, like I'd spent 15 years carrying a weight I didn't know I had, and now that it was gone, I didn't know how to stand upright without it. My body felt lighter and heavier at the same time. My hands were steady, my breathing even. But inside, something was crumbling, not breaking, exactly, rearranging, becoming something new. Dante sat beside me, close but not touching, giving me space to feel whatever I needed to feel. That was the thing I was learning about him. He didn't try to fix everything, didn't offer platitudes or false comfort. Sometimes he just witnessed, just stayed. His presence was steady as a lighthouse, and I found myself breathing in rhythm with him without meaning to. My mother would have been 53 next month. I said it to the television, to the image of Kane being loaded into a federal vehicle. His head ducked like he was ashamed. Like shame meant anything to a man who'd murdered 6 people to make a point. November 15th. She loved her birthday. Would bake herself a cake even though that's supposed to be someone else's job. Chocolate with raspberry filling. I haven't made it since she died. My voice cracked on the last word. Dante's hand found mine in the space between us, his fingers warm and solid. I don't know what she would have become, if she would have liked who I am, if she'd be proud or disappointed or just relieved I survived. I became an editor because she loved books, loved words, but I don't know if I chose it for her or for me. And now I'll never know if she would have approved. She'd be proud. You didn't know her. No, but I know you. I looked at him then. Really looked. Morning light streaming through the windows, catching in his dark hair, softening the hard angles of his face. The man who'd threatened a killer to protect me, who'd let me risk everything because he understood that some battles you have to fight yourself, who'd kissed me like I was the only real thing in a world made of smoke and mirrors. What happens now? The question was bigger than I meant it to be. Bigger than just Kane's arrest or the trial that would follow. Kane goes to trial. His nephew already flipped. With your evidence and his testimony, the feds have enough to put him away for life. Minimum 25 years. He'll die in prison. Good. I said it flatly, without satisfaction. Justice didn't feel the way I thought it would. It didn't bring my mother back. Didn't erase 15 years of nightmares or make my father's ghost apologize for all the lies. It just was a thing that happened. An ending that made space for something else. The Zanetti family backed off. Once they saw what you did to Kane, how you built a case that destroyed him without any help from me, they realized you weren't leverage. You were a liability. Touching you would bring the kind of attention they can't afford. So I'm safe. You're safe. The words should have felt like relief. Instead, they felt like falling. Like the adrenaline that had kept me running for weeks had finally burned out, leaving nothing but exhaustion and the terrifying question of what came next. I meant with us. The words came out quieter than I intended. Smaller. Vulnerable in a way I hadn't let myself be even when Kane had my mother's locket, even when the FBI had Dante in handcuffs, even when I'd walked into that diner knowing I might not walk out. Us, like we were a thing that could be named. A thing that existed outside of danger and necessity and the forced intimacy of survival. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the lake beyond the windows. The water was gray under November clouds, restless and cold. I watched his profile, memorizing the line of his jaw. the way his shoulders carried tension even when he was sitting still. The small tell of his thumb rubbing across my knuckles like he was memorizing me too. You should go home. Back to your apartment. Your life. The one you had before you left that note on my door. It felt like falling. Like the ground had opened up and I was tumbling through space with nothing to catch me. My chest tightened, and I pulled my hand away from his, needing distance to breathe. Is that what you want? It's what's safe, what's right. That's not what I asked. He turned to face me, and I saw it. The same fear I felt, reflected back. The terror of wanting something you know could destroy you. The exhaustion of spending a lifetime building walls and then meeting someone who made you want to tear them down. I've spent my entire life keeping people at a distance. It's how you survive in my world. How you protect the few things that matter. My sister died because she fell in love with someone who made her visible to the wrong people. My father died because he couldn't let go of revenge. I watched love destroy everyone I cared about, and I promised myself I'd never... He stopped. Shook his head like he was arguing with himself. Like there was a war happening inside him and he didn't know which side to root for. And then you showed up? In pajamas and a coffee stain, demanding quiet like you had any right to make demands of me. And instead of being angry, I was curious, interested. You looked at me like I was just a man who played his music too loud, not like I was Dante Caruso, not like I was the thing people cross the street to avoid. You are just a man who plays his music too loud. Emma, you're also a crime boss who threatened to destroy an entire family, who has men like Marco willing to die for you, who lives in a world where violence is currency and trust is suicide. I know that. I've seen it. I watched you put your hand around Kane's throat, and I wasn't afraid of you. I was afraid for you, because I saw what it cost you to be that person. I moved closer, closing the distance he'd created, refusing to let him retreat into the safety of isolation. You made me want something different, something I have no right to want, but I'm taking it anyway, because I spent 15 years being afraid. Being small. Being the girl whose mother died and whose father gave up. And I'm done living like I'm already a ghost. What if I can't give you normal? What if my war never ends? Then I guess I'm learning Italian. The laugh that escaped him was unexpected. Raw and genuine and surprised, like he'd forgotten he could make that sound. It transformed his face, softened every hard edge, made him look younger and almost unbearably vulnerable. He pulled me closer, and I went, letting him wrap his arms around me, pressing my face against his chest where I could hear his heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. I still have deadlines, manuscripts, a career that requires me to actually leave this building occasionally. Marco can drive you. I'm not having a bodyguard forever. 6 months? Until the trial's over and Kane's crew dissolves? 3 months? 4. Deal. We sat there as the news moved on to other stories, other tragedies, the world continuing its rotation like nothing fundamental had shifted. But something had, for both of us. I'd faced the man who killed my mother, proved my father's debt wasn't mine to carry. Chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. And Dante had let someone see him, really see him, for the first time in years. Had chosen vulnerability over safety. Had admitted that he wanted something beyond survival. The trial took 4 months. I testified twice. Once about my father's payments. Once about my mother's death. I looked at Kane across the courtroom and felt nothing. Not hatred. Not fear. Not even satisfaction. He was just an old man who'd made terrible choices, and now he was paying for them. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. I didn't stay to watch him taken away. Dante was waiting in the hallway, Marco a discreet distance behind him. He didn't ask how I felt, just took my hand and walked me out of the courthouse into the spring air. We got lunch at a diner in Wicker Park. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fries and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner too long. Normal, ordinary, exactly what I needed. 3 weeks after the trial ended, I moved back to my apartment. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Because I needed to prove to myself that I could exist in my own space again without fear. That Vincent Kane hadn't stolen that from me. That I could build a life that was mine, not just a reaction to trauma or a refuge from danger. Dante understood. Of course he did. He'd spent his life understanding the necessity of spaces people could call their own. "I'm not leaving you. I'm just going home." I said it while packing my clothes, the manuscripts I'd been editing, the plants I'd somehow managed not to kill during my extended stay. "I know. And you can visit. Anytime. My door is always—" "Emma." He stopped me, hands on my shoulders, eyes serious. "You don't have to explain. You don't have to justify needing your own space. I get it, better than most people. Will you miss me?" The question came out smaller than I intended, more vulnerable. He kissed my forehead, gentle and deliberate. Every day. The first night back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. Too quiet after weeks in Dante's penthouse, where there was always some ambient sound, the hum of traffic far below, Marco's occasional movements in the hallway, Dante working late in his office. My apartment felt empty. Not unsafe, just hollow. Like I'd outgrown it somehow during my time away. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator clang its familiar song, wondering if I'd made a mistake. If choosing independence meant choosing loneliness. If I'd survived Kane only to end up exactly where I started, alone in a fifth-floor walk-up, editing other people's stories instead of living my own. Then I heard it. Music. Low and beautiful. Jazz. Drifting through the wall from next door. A saxophone. Mournful and sweet. Backed by piano and bass. The kind of music that made you think about rainy nights and old lovers and all the beautiful, melancholy things that made life worth living. I smiled. Got up. Opened my window. Dante was on his balcony, a glass of wine in hand, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. The city glittered behind him like a promise. All those lights representing lives being lived, stories being written, people choosing each other in the face of impossible odds. When he saw me, he raised the glass in greeting. "Too loud?" His voice carried across the space between us, warm with humor and something deeper, something that felt like coming home. Just right. He smiled, that rare, devastating smile that made him look younger, softer, almost vulnerable. The smile I was learning meant he was happy, truly happy, in a way he probably hadn't been in years. Good, because I'm not stopping. Neither am I. We stood there, separated by 15 feet and a lifetime of choices, connected by something that didn't have a name yet, something that felt like healing, like hope, like the beginning of a story that belonged only to us. Later that night, he knocked on my door. I let him in without hesitation, and we sat on my couch. The same couch where I'd worked through countless manuscripts, where I'd cried after my father's funeral, where I'd built a life one quiet evening at a time. Now Dante was here, fitting into my space like he'd always belonged, and it felt right. Not easy, not simple, but real. "Tell me something true." I said it softly, curled against his side, my head on his shoulder. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Who you were before all this, before the suits and the power and the weight of running an empire." He was quiet for a long moment, his hand tracing absent patterns on my arm. "I wanted to be a teacher. History. Before my father died and I inherited everything I never asked for, I used to think about a classroom full of kids, about making the past come alive for them, making them understand that history isn't just dates and names. It's people making choices, same as we are. The confession hung between us, fragile and honest. You could still do that. Someday, maybe, when I'm too old to be a threat, when the next generation takes over and I can finally step back. And what would you teach them? About choices. That they matter. That every choice, good or bad, shapes who we become. That we're not trapped by our circumstances. We're defined by what we do with them. I thought about that. About my mother's death and my father's debt. About a complaint note left on a door and everything that came after. About choosing to face Kane instead of hiding. About choosing Dante instead of running. I spent 15 years believing I was broken. That my mother's death had hollowed me out, leaving nothing but scar tissue and survival instinct. But standing at that window tonight, looking at you, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I was forged, shaped by fire into something stronger than I ever could have been without it. We both were. His voice was quiet, but I heard the truth in it. The acknowledgement that we'd both survived things that should have destroyed us. That we'd both chosen to keep living, keep trying, keep reaching for something better even when it would have been easier to give up. Power isn't about control, it's about choice. I said it like a realization, like something I'd been circling around for weeks and was only now able to name, and I choose you. Not because you saved me, because you let me save myself. Not because you're powerful, because you're human, flawed and dangerous and trying, same as me. He kissed me then, slow and deliberate, like we had all the time in the world, like we were writing a story with no deadline, no pressure, just two people choosing each other one day at a time. We're both still dangerous, still scarred, still standing, still learning how to be more than our worst moments, more than our fears, more than the sum of our trauma. And when I close my eyes at night, I don't hear threats or silence. I hear music and possibility and the sound of my own voice, finally telling a story that's mine. A story where the girl who lost everything finds not just survival, but something rarer. A life worth living. A love worth risking everything for. A future that belongs to her. Built on her own terms, with someone who sees all of her, the strength and the fear, the courage and the doubt, and chooses her anyway. My mother would have been 54 this year. I baked her cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, and shared it with Dante on my tiny balcony while the city hummed below us. I told him stories about her, about Sunday mornings and library trips and the way she used to sing off-key while cooking. I cried, and he held me, and it felt like healing, like permission to grieve and move forward at the same time. I'm writing my own book now, not editing someone else's words, but finding my own. It's about a girl who thought she was broken, who learned she was forged, about choosing yourself even when it's terrifying, about finding love in the aftermath of violence, about the quiet courage of opening a window and letting music in. Dante reads every chapter, tells me when I'm holding back, when I'm being too careful with the truth. He understands better than anyone that the only stories worth telling are the ones that cost us something to write. We're still navigating what this is. This thing between us. We argue about my safety. He wants more protection than I'm willing to accept. We negotiate boundaries. His world is still violent, still dangerous, and I refuse to be naive about that. But we keep choosing each other, keep showing up, keep being honest even when it hurts. Some mornings I wake up in my apartment, some mornings I wake up in his. And gradually, the distance between those two spaces feels less like separation and more like breathing room, like two people learning to be together without losing themselves. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.